So let's walk through what we call our social system mapping theory of transformation, or sometimes we call it the transformational vortex. It starts with a group of people. They might or might not consider themselves part of a group at first. They may know each other, but they might not. They might already be coordinated or collaborating in some kind of way, and they might not. But they have something in common, some sense of purpose around some way that they'd like some system to be better. Or they could also be enmeshed in a particular system that they care about protecting or improving, or something like that. And at some point, at least some of these people begin to realize that if they worked together, if they were more networked, coordinated, collaborative, if they shared their learning and their efforts, they could be more effective. Their intentions would ripple out and they'd have more impact on the systems that they're concerned about. And because of this realization, at some point, some subset of these people decides to take on responsibility for developing a network. They decide to support the coordination and connections needed to catalyze and foster more collaboration among the people on the ground. Now, these might be staff of a foundation, or they might be a specific kind of nonprofit or a backbone organization, or they might just be members of the group on the ground that step in voluntarily because they share a strong desire to create greater impact. And so this subset of the larger group starts to work on building relationships. That's represented by this orange swath here. This is the relational shift that I talked about in the introduction to social system mapping. They build relationships among themselves, they start to envision the possibilities, they consider how to move forward, and they start to plan. So they're connecting. And then at some point, they start to move this connecting behavior outward from themselves. So they start to convene groups, to introduce people and help them connect, to facilitate opportunities for shared learning, and to perhaps catalyze some micro collaborations. And finally, these people who have chosen to take on responsibility for bringing this network together, they'll start to realize that there's ways that they need to understand the network better. That it's nearly impossible to know just by looking or just by talking to people who's working on what issues, who's got what skills or what assets that they could contribute, who knows each other already, who doesn't know each other, who's been collaborating, who represents the various systemic perspectives or the different components of the system, what kinds of support the different members of the network might need and help that other members could offer. So they just start to realize that they don't know enough and they would like to know more. Or maybe they know, but they would like everybody else to have access to this information. At that point, they start to think about mapping. They start to want access to more information, and they're beginning to envision something resembling a social system map. They might not know about social system mapping yet, but a social system map would be a big support related to what they're wanting and imagining having access to. It would help them move forward more wisely. So finally, if the stars align, they decide to go ahead and start a social system mapping project. Now, in an ideal world, we'd use the process of designing the map itself as an opportunity to begin to do some shared learning and some dialoguing and begin to look from different positions and perspectives of the system. From the very beginning, the design of the map would be co-created by as many member perspectives as you could get from as many different systemic positions or subgroups or sectors as possible. And that would ensure that all the members of the network can see the kinds of things that they want to see in the map. They'd already be getting started thinking together about what we would like to know, how do things fit together that we can't see, etc. And so this process, in and of itself, requires people to begin to surface their beliefs and the worldviews as they relate to the system in question. So you'd already be beginning the collective learning and sense-making process. And so obviously the more co-created your starting point in your map design, the better. But the reality is that often the people that you'd be looking to the most for input are also the people who are the most stretched, who are called on by everybody for everything, and so they don't necessarily have the capacity when you want to get started. In addition, it's often the case that people on the network have survey fatigue, and this can easily seem like more of the same old thing, or they will understandably be dubious about the ways that the data might be used. There may be power and trust issues. And so the people that you would like to involve aren't always available or interested in devoting time to something that they don't see a whole lot of value in. And so rather than trying to force something that's just not ready to happen, or spending a whole lot of time and energy trying to convince people to see value in something that just isn't landing for them yet, we go ahead and get started. We just do our best to make sure that it reflects the needs of the whole, knowing that we have to start somewhere and knowing that things will change once we've created this starting point. Because from a living systems perspective, we understand that no matter how perfect or imperfect the starting point is, that no one can foresee every possibility up front. No one can understand all of the different realities that people on the ground are working with, or what kind of information they'll be wanting a year from now. And until we have an actual contextually relevant social system map for people to interact with, it's hard to envision and understand how it could be useful. So there will be discoveries and changes will be necessary no matter what. And having something applicable to start with is better than trying to manipulate and force things. Until there's something tangible to interact with, it's often too abstract for most changemakers to want to spend time on. But the beauty of a social system map is that it's iterative. Things can evolve. It's not one and done. And it's far easier to get people's interest once they understand the purpose and the value of the map, and they see how it can be used to support their collective goals. So we don't overwork it. We start where there is energy and capacity, with people who are available and interested in working on it, which means we often start with a fairly basic and somewhat generic survey, but we do the best that we can and we're upfront about that. We don't talk in terms of absolutes or finalities. We say, this is our best guess, this is just a starting point, and we will explore together and improve this over time as we learn more. And then we go ahead and begin to gather data from the people in the network. So the data goes into this map that we've been imagining and designing, and then it can be accessed by everyone in the network. At first, the main users of the map will be the core group who are working to catalyze the network. They'll use it to build relationships, to make strategic introductions, to identify hot topics in the network and do convenings around those topics. So it's supporting this relational shift that I talked about in the introduction to social system mapping. So at a minimum, keeping the map active over coming years will help them to be strategic in their network weaving and help them to see how well they're doing at generating more and stronger relationships. And at the same time, people on the ground will start to have opinions and give feedback. They'll suggest better wording or fill in where something is missed. They'll start to come up with more and different information that it would be good to gather. And we treat all of this continued input as an opportunity to explore and to dialogue together. Each question can help a group unpack some relevant element of their network or broader system together to create more and more shared understanding. And the great thing about a social system map is that you can just go ahead and add new questions. You could change the language. You could continue to tweak the survey, continue to add new members, continue to ask them to update their relationships to one another. So as people use it and we learn more about the needs and the dynamics of the network, we make changes. The shape of the data starts to change. The design of the overall social system map grows progressively closer to the intentions of the whole network. It gets progressively more specific to the context, and people are finding it more useful. People start using it to connect with one another. Then, as members get more comfortable with the map and the map becomes more aligned with the purpose of the network, we can start to use the map to surface structural tensions and to develop greater insight into the complexity of the network as well as the broader system that we're hoping to change. We can do shared inquiry into the different perspectives and dynamics in the network, why the structure might be the way it is. Are people from the groups with different perspectives talking to each other? How are the relevant assets flowing? Are there gaps that need to be addressed? How do the core and the periphery relate to one another? How do both formal and informal power fit into the whole puzzle? Is privilege strengthening the overall whole, or is it undermining the purpose? Whatever we can, and often even the things we can't see in a map, can become an opportunity for meaningful dialogue. Identifying missing questions, framing new questions, and making sense of the new information as it comes in. All of these can be used to increase shared understanding and trust and overall cohesion and alignment. So now we're getting into the cognitive shift that I referred to in the introduction, which we represent here in the graphic with these purple swaths. The shared processes we can generate around the map are starting to support a mindset that is more capable of dealing with volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous situations. It's starting to increase the collective capacity for managing in complexity and for affecting systemic change. And if we want to get as much value as possible from our map, we'll also start telling the story of the map to the network. How we're using it, what we're learning from it, how it's helping us to inform the network and to deliver what the network needs. So people are beginning to see and experience for themselves the power and the potential of a social system map. And the thing that I really like about a social system map is that you're learning and applying this cognitive shift in the context of the system that you're already working on and invested in. So it's not like you're studying case studies that you don't feel connected to or learning from examples of systems or contexts that aren't your own with people that you have a temporary connection to. You're actually learning and applying new ways of working and thinking in your own network, in the system you care about changing, with the people who have a commitment similar to your own. You're developing longer term, action oriented relationships, and you're supporting each other in this new way of thinking and developing new mental habits. Because this new living systems way of thinking takes practice. It takes collective practice, not just solitary practice. And a social system map can support all of that in a way that's relevant and immediate. So over time, there's more and more of that cognitive shift going on, and the survey and the questions asked and the design of the map just keep getting closer and closer to that specific context that we've mapped. And eventually, in our hypothetical mature state of the network, the data in the map and the map itself are in alignment with the context and are being used to enhance both the relationships and the cognitive shifts. And we believe that this increasing alignment and shared understanding increases the capacity and the trust and the belonging within the network. And that creates a momentum of its own that generates energy and power to accomplish the network's goals. It becomes a vortex that can give us maximum transformational impact. And so that's the vision behind social system mapping, and that's the theory of transformation that supports our belief that our intentions can be realized one iteration of a social system map after another. Thanks for watching.